Oh, okay. So, hi everyone. Uh,
Hi. Hi.
Tonight, we're by popular demand, Rabbi Elwell is back to deliver a uh, I guess what would you call it?
Study.
A study on the Torah. And well, I don't know if it's this week's parsha because sometimes, Rabbi, you don't necessarily stick to the parsha. Um, so it's just great to see everybody back. Sue, we have Sue every other week, probably until the end of October. And then we're going to figure out after that. But we're going to be meeting every other week on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. And it's great to see everybody. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Elwell. Rabbi Elwell, if there's anything I left out, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So welcome everyone. Bruchim habaim, Shana Tova. It's our first opportunity to meet in 5782. And here we are. This month that we're in we're finishing up the month of Tishrei, which is jam-packed with all these holidays. And the joke for rabbis is that the next month is the favorite month because there aren't any holidays. But it's almost too soon to say that since we're just coming out of Simchat Torah. And my sukkah is still up. I was so happy to be able to celebrate in the sukkah with several of you last week and to actually meet Rachel in person for the first time and to see Wesley and to meet Danny, who I see is coming on right now. And the rest of you, several of you I've met in person before, and God willing, maybe even the course of this year, we'll have the opportunity to be in person again. We are going to be on Zoom, as Heshi said, every other week. For the month of November, I am hoping to go to Israel if I can get cleared. So that's why I would not be teaching in the month of November because of the time change. And we decided not to pre-record it or anything like that, but it would be the middle of the night. So, but I will be back in December and then we will reconnect. And Heshi and Ellen are going to figure out what to do for the couple of meetings that will be missed in the month of November. But we do have 3 meetings coming up before we have that break. So we'll be meeting on the 12th for Lech Lecha and on the 26th for Vayera. And tonight we're going to do Bereshit. So even though we did Bereshit a year ago when we began our study together, because it's such a powerful portion and it seems to me really appropriate to jump in. I also welcome, it's very appropriate actually to have animals on screen today because of course this is the portion in which the world was created and all the living things as well. So I saw that there seemed to be a 4-footed thing at Wesley's house, and also with Heshi and David, and others of you may have some beautiful 4-legged friends who are joining the 2-legged folks. So I want to also thank Susan Bear, who is going to be our tech angel today and in many study opportunities to come. So I would love us just to go around. I think many of us know each other, but there may be some new faces, and to just say your name to welcome this day. And actually, I'm going to call on you because I know we all have a different layout. And there was a very funny piece in, I think it was in the New York Times, maybe it was in the New Yorker, about new protocols for behaving in person. And one of the jokes was having a mirror because we're so used to looking at ourselves. And in real life, we don't do that. So as some of you may know, we can cut out our own video if we want, if we don't want to be staring at our faces. But we love to see each other's faces. So please don't wipe yourself out if possible. if your face can be shown. Jerry already told us why he's not, but let's start with Susan, just an introduction. And if you want to say geographically or physically where you are tonight, that's fine too, but we're going to keep them brief. Susan.
Susan Bear, 3 blocks from RS.
Heshi and David.
Heshi Zinman and David Fisher. David Fisher. We are in at Center City, Broad Spruce, and also I have regrets from my co-chair Ellen Poster, who is still at her grandson's birthday party, and so regrets not being able to be here.
Lovely. Eve.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eve Miller. I live in South Philly, and I'm happy to be here.
Great. Muriel.
Muriel Cadera, and I'm at 1900 JFK Boulevard. And it's great to be back with this group.
Thank you. Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Merman. I'm about 8 blocks from RS and about 2 blocks from the Art Museum, just off the Parkway.
Nice. Jerry, do you want to jump in for a second? Skipping Jerry, moving on to
I can,
you're here.
while I'm walking down the 16th Street in our nation's capital. So I was the founder of the Gay Synagogue, may it rest in peace. And I live in Queen Village, Bella Vista. And is that enough?
That's it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Benzion and Jane.
Yes, shalom everyone. We live in Society Hill, and if I look to my left, I can see the Battleship, New Jersey. I kid you not. It's a very safe neighborhood. We got a battleship in the front yard.
Yeah.
Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Doherty. I live in East Falls, Philadelphia.
Great. Sidavi.
Hi, I'm Sadavi. I live in South Philadelphia.
Welcome. Ned.
Hi, I'm Ned. I live about 160 blocks from RS. Actually, I live in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. I'm glad to be joining you from across the Delaware.
Wonderful. Welcome. So, Jeff and Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. Stephanie apologizes. She's on a call with the American Federation of Teachers, and Randy Weingarten's guest speaker tonight is Nancy Pelosi, which I was listening to just before I got on this call. I am up the street from you, Rachel. We live in Roxborough. And Susan, thank you for leading the Sukkah event, or it was just really good.
Thank you.
Yes, it was.
Wesley.
Hi, I'm Wesley Neal. I live in West Philly. This is my cat, Pluto.
What's your cat's name? What's your cat's name?
Pluto.
P-L-U-T-A? Pluto.
Yeah, like the X-planet.
Right.
Like the famous Pluto. The dog.
Cecile.
Hi, I'm Cecile Gouffra-McKenna, and I may live in South Philly or Center City, depending on who's looking at the map. I'm on 16 and South.
Well.
That's Center City. That's Center City.
Yeah, it depends. We also call it Graduate Hospital. Danny.
I'm Danny Shapiro. I also live in South Philly. This is my cat, Whitney.
Oh, wow. We have quite a convention of cats tonight. So it's really appropriate for our beautiful portion. And I'm going to ask Susan to put up our bracha, and we'll all say it together. So take a breath first. Let's settle. It's so wonderful to be together and to know that someday we will be sitting together in the same room. And for now, we're creating this room. Baruch
Atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech
Haolam, Cherokee Shannon,
Asher
B'shanu
Mitzvotav
Sivan,
Tzivanu.
Divrei Torah.
Divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who sanctified us with commandments and commanded us to be engaged with words of God. Amen.
Amen.
So we are at the first portion of the book of Genesis, the first portion of the 5 books of our 5 books of Moses. And those of you who do have a Tanakh or a Torah or something, I would love you to have it open because we're going to be looking at a somewhat different interpretation / translation. So if you can grab a more traditional version, that's great. Otherwise, you're going to be fine. So Susan has a handout, and I'm actually going to ask you to go to the very end of the handout. Susan, the very last page.
Is it the first thing you sent me?
Yes, the thing the
Okay.
first thing I sent you,
Yep.
the PDF, the long one. So she will bring it up and we will take a look at it. So this is exactly what I wanted us to look at. So I brought this to your attention last year when we were studying together, and in fact, when we studied this portion. So we know this portion really well, or we think we do. And so part of what I hope we are doing with our whole Torah Queries is pushing the boundaries, is pushing on the words, pushing on the tradition, pushing on our own hearts and minds to rediscover and reclaim this sacred text as something that we can really bring into our own lives and think about perhaps in a different way than we ever did before. So for some of us, always, it's encountering a text anew. We saw that a lot. Many of us, most of us had the opportunity to study together last year. So we're discovering texts we never saw before, but we're also discovering texts that we thought we knew, yet we're looking at them from a different point of view. And in many ways, I think that's what the whole process of queering is about, is looking at things we've thought we knew and seeing them in a different light. And we certainly, I mean, you can think of many examples in your own lives, and there are new examples every day. And part of the miracle of being alive, and being alive at this time where the world in some ways, I mean, we began a new year, seems to be recreated. And we are hopeful that we are going to make it through this pandemic. And Muriel just mentioned that she was able to get a booster shot today. So with 3 inoculations against this disease, hopefully you're going to be able, Muriel, and those others of us who are going to be well vaccinated will be walking with greater strength in the world and making it to another side. And I don't even want to say the other side, but to another perspective in how we walk in the world. And this amazing portion, of course, is about the creation of the world. And it then challenges us to think about the creation of our own selves, not only our physical selves, but who are our spiritual selves. So I want to present to you yet again, and some of you get the foreword, the Jewish foreword online, and you may have seen that the lead article in today's Jewish foreword is about this very topic that we're looking at now on the screen. The regendered Bible, called Torah. And I introduced this to you last year. Maybe some of you have dived into it a little more deeply. But this is a really amazing, to me, and profoundly courageous project of looking at the Torah through really different eyes. So here, I'm just going to read this because it's right in front of us. Torata is an initiative to rewrite the Bible by reversing the genders of all characters. This technical adaptation unsettles habitual thinking of our ancient stories. Torata invites divine influence to express itself through a mother-daughter lineage and codifies women's experience in sacred terms. New matriarchs in central positions come to life, as well as patriarchs who care for their daughters. When both narratives come together, they create a vision for a Bible that is a complete spiritual body. The joining of both narratives opens possibilities for gender fluid readings. And then that's all we need for now. This was written for a particular project presentation. So what we're going to be looking at tonight, and perhaps in the future as well, is this whole idea of a regendered Bible, of Torata. And I have had the good fortune to get to know Yael Kanarak particularly over the last few months. And I'm going to wait till the noise outside my window subsides. And I've come to know Yael, who is the person who created this project, as an enormously insightful, creative, and I know I used the word courageous already, but it's an amazingly courageous project because it makes us rethink things that we've taken for granted, not only God's gender, but also the gender of all the people who are in our sacred story. So we're going to start tonight in this parsha is about the creation of humankind. We're going to start at the very beginning. And now, Susan, you're going to help us go to the very first beginning here. Okay. So
Is it large enough for everybody?
Is it large enough? I see Steve is shaking his head. Yes. You know, also you can use your little reaction things for me and Susan to see. Great. So we're going to start with chapter 1 here. And again, it's called Torata, which is her Torah, as opposed to Torato, his Torah, which is the one we've always read. And the hope is that together they will come together and be Torah. So what we've always called Torah is really a patriarchal document. And what she is saying is, by creating it as a matriarchal document, it's going to do something to our minds and maybe even to our bodies, because all of us grew up and have lived in a time of gendered bodies. And that's part of the wonderful challenge that's coming at this time of living in the world, to think about changing genders, about fluidity in genders, things that most of us did not grow up thinking about. And we now know that that opens up all kinds of possibilities for us individually and how we relate to others in the world. And my feeling about this project is that it does this, even though it's still turning patriarchy on its head and talking about a matriarchy. What that does, I think, is that it breaks it open and goes and suggests that there's real truth beyond the binary. So you'll see if you agree with me as we read this. And so a few little things. She has changed the name of God from Elohim to Elohim. And you're going to see this is a feminized God / goddess. And we're going to see how this plays out. So we're going to primarily be focusing on English. if we had more time, we would look at Hebrew at the same time, but I'll point things out as we stumble over them. So I would love to have a reader. And I'm just of who I can see, and you can say no, thank you. Danny, would you be willing to start and be our reader?
Sure. In the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the spirit of Elohim hovered over the face of the waters. And Elohim said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And Elohim saw the light, that it was good. And Elohim divided the light from the darkness. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness she called night. And there was evening and there was morning, day one.
So I'm going to ask you to stop, and just if someone wants to raise their hand, actually, Susan, I may need your help because I can't see the full gallery at once. Anyone want to say something that hit her or him or them, even as we just read about this first day?
And it's actually easier, I think, for Rabbi and I to see if you use the virtual raise hand.
Great. Anyone? In verses 1 through 5? Oh, good. Ned.
Yeah, I was struck. I'm just, in the English, it felt very different, right? Because I think we all have our images of, how a male, I guess, women should be more caretakers and nurturing. And so I guess that's what played in my head, for better or for worse, is just, maybe like instead of a father figure creating the world and saying this is the way it is, there was something very different about the feel. I don't know if I have the words for it. I imagine it feels even more so in the Hebrew, because you got to start changing not just God's name, but you got to start changing all those verbs too. So I imagine it really hits home if you start, to read the Hebrew and understand where those words were changed.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to jump in here? Jeff.
I was just wondering why we even have he there. I thought, why isn't it just God versus he or she?
All right. Well, that's a good question. And there's been lots of conversation over the centuries about how do we translate. And there was this taken for granted that the powerful God was male. I mean, we just finished a whole holiday season of Avinu Malkeinu, and it's only in the last few years that we have thinking about God's gender at all. Rachel.
Yeah, I don't know if this is just because of like everything that I've been steeped in until now, or there's something about the hovering over the face of the waters that feels very different to me, but it reminds me of the moon in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I find that interesting.
In many traditions, the sun is masculine and the moon is female, and this merachefet al pnei hamayim, this is the phrase. Elohim merachefet al moon image. You were almost seeing the moon in the waters. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's move on. And Rachel, would you be our reader starting in verse 6, please?
Sure. And Elohim said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And Elohim made the expanse and divided the waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse. And it was so. And Elohim called the expanse heaven, and there was evening and there was morning, day 2. And Elohim said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. Did I screw this up somehow?
No, I don't think so. So Rabbi? Did we lose her? Did we lose Rabbi Elwell?
We might have, I know she broke up. Did she break up for you too? We did lose the rabbi.
Yeah, well, we did lose her. I just saw her talit, I think.
Do you have a cell number you can text? I don't know that I do.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah, there she is. Sue, you're muted.
Okay, I became unstable.
Your computer became unstable.
Yeah, she sure did. All right. So
can I
did
say one
Rachel
thing?
read?
Yeah, Rabbi,
Yeah, of
can I
course.
say one thing? Susan, can you go up to the previous section? I just wanted to, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the spirit of Elohim hovered over the face of the waters. I just find it interesting that spirit, which is something you can't see, unless you can, but you can see how a person behaves and see their spirit, but generally spirit is not something that's visible. And so I just thought it was interesting that the spirit of Elohim was hovering over the face of the waters. I'm not sure why,
So I love the fact that you noticed this. This has always been there waiting for you to discover it. So this is not part of the regendering. This is the text.
So it's
that phrase, Baruch Elohim, that I'm just saying the traditional, Baruch Elohim merachefet al panei, over the face of the water. So when we start listening with more attention, we hear things we never heard before. That's what's happening
That's
here.
what's happening. Okay, thanks.
So, but I'd love to move on. So, Rachel, I'd like you to start reading with verse 7. I'm sorry that I flipped out for a few minutes.
We actually read through verse 9. And I think we have the rabbi phrasing up.
She might be frozen. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Can you hear us, Rabbi? You are muted.
I think we've lost her again.
It happened again, and I'm so sorry.
If you went
Yeah.
out and came back
I don't know
in,
why this is happening. I'm showing full bars.
would it help Susan Bear if Rabbi Elwell went out and came back?
It's always possible.
So Rabbi, do you want to go out and come back?
Or could she restart her computer?
Or even just turn the video off, turn her video off
Yeah.
for a while.
Did we?
But she left. Right. Yeah, she's gone.
Hope she's still there.
Maybe we could continue reading. Like if you raise it up.
I will defer to Hashi. Rabbi is still.
Well, let's continue to read and then we'll, hopefully the rabbi will go out and come back.
Yes, please continue to read. I'm back.
Are
I'm
you
back.
Okay.
I am back. Yeah, I am. I'm hoping I can stay back.
We were just thinking, Rabbi, that if you if you got out of your video or if you got out of the Zoom and came back, that might help.
Okay, all right.
And so we would continue reading until you came back. Okay, so let's continue to read.
Eshi, would you like to read a
Yeah,
few
am I
verses?
from 10? Yeah.
Yes.
And Elohim called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters she called seas. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim said, let the earth sprout grass, seed-bearing plants, and fruit trees, making fruit according to their kind from the seeds inside upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth sprouted grass, seed-bearing plants, and trees, making fruit according to their kind from the seeds inside. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, day 3.
I have a question. The 11 and 12 are very much the same, aren't they?
Let the earth sprout grass.
I'm trying to figure out what's different.
11 seems to be in the future tense and 12 seems to be in the past tense.
Let the earth and
Oh, the 11 is saying, well,
let the earth sprout grass, seed-bearing plants, and fruit trees. Let the earth sprout. So let it now and in the future. And it was so, and the earth sprouted grass, seed-bearing plants.
Yeah, it was the same in 6 and 7. It was
Yeah,
like, let's
Yeah.
do this. And then I did
And
it.
then the next verse is it happened.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening. And one is saying, then God said, let's, this is, and here's, then comes the command. And then the following verse is the result of, and this is what happened when God commanded. And it also says that, Elohim or God saw that it was good, right? Which is only in the second verse as well.
Hi, this is Cecile. May I ask a question to the native English speakers?
Sure.
Go back on the conversation because I was, when Rabbi Sue said God/goddess, and it was imparted on me that, well, maybe God is gendered in English since there is a word for it in the feminine. So when I hear the beginning of a conversation saying, why don't we just keep God? And I think it was Jeff saying that, since, it's neutral, is God a masculine word in English?
Yeah.
Sue, Rabbi, you're muted.
What a wonderful question.
Yeah.
Is God a masculine word in English? If God weren't a masculine word in English, there would be no need for the word goddess.
Exactly my point.
Rabbi Sue, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah,
Laura.
so I just, so in my understanding as probably one of the younger members here, God and goddess used to be used, excuse me, my throat. But in any conversation that I've had with anyone who's like Gen Z or younger, we don't really use the word goddess at all. And I've noticed that. So it tends to be the younger generation the person is a part of, the less likely they are to use a gendered term. So stuff like goddess for God or waitress for waiter, we eliminate that and just use like actor, waiter, God, rather than actress, waitress, goddess. So it can be gender neutral, but.
Yes, well, thank you. And I think that here is one of the many ways that the creator of the regendered Torah is experimenting and also and pushing the boundaries for herself and for the listeners and the people who participate in this project. So this is very much an evolving project. And I think that the power of using the word goddess to speak about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is of course that's one traditional way of speaking about God. I really appreciate what you've said, Morag, that we are using terms like actor is a perfect example. Flight attendant, there are many of them that we could think. And I'm a member, you know, I work as a police person or whatever it is. And, you know, as someone who's a rabbi, who's not a woman rabbi. And yet it's interesting because people have really struggled with the whole idea of women in a wide range of professions. And whether it's a physician or an attorney or an architect. So back to this, what this is doing is pushing all of us to say, wait, in exactly the way you've done it. And I really appreciate that. And I also love Cecile's earlier question. So I would like very much in the short time that we have left to move down through this. And Susan, would you move down with me? Thank you. Keep going. So, all right, let's start at the top of that page. Go back up a little bit. Okay, here we are. So there's all this creation's been going on, and Elohim blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, day 5. So we skipped through a bit and we got all the way up to day 5, but day 5 becomes a really big one. So Morag, I get to look at you, and if you would be willing to read day 5, starting with verse 24, please.
Yeah, of course. And Elohim said, let the earth bring forth living creatures after its kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after its kind. And it was so. And Elohim made the beasts of the earth after its kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground after its kind. And Elohim said that it was good. And Elohim said, let us make a Jehovah in our image, after our likeness, and let her have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth.
All right, we're going to stop right there. So Elohim is creating a Chova. A Chova. So this word, I think there might be a footnote at the bottom of this page about this word. Am I correct? Maybe it's a little farther down, and maybe there is no footnote, and it's in a different version that I don't have in front of us, but let's see. Okay, so the word Chava that she created is connected to the word Chava, which is the Hebrew for Eve, which is a source of all life. So here is the source of all life. Let us make a source of life in our image. And she Yael, in creating this English, is very intentional. A Chova, because actually that's how it exists in the original Hebrew. Let us make Adam, a person in our image. So we're already in a being challenged. It's not make necessarily a man. A better translation really is a person or a human being, so that we're not already into a gendered understanding. But what we're doing here is also, I feel like we're being played with in a really wonderful way, that the tradition says, let us make Adam in our image, after our likeness, and let him. It's rarely translated them. Today, we might say them because we're more awake to the problems of creating the world in a binary sensibility. But here, to help us wake up, let her have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl, etc. And then Morag read for us, Elohim created the Chovah in her own image. In the image of Elohim, she created her, female and male. She created them. So we've all read this before. I'm wondering how it felt as you read it now. And I would love to see some hands raised, and I think I'll need Susan's help. Maybe.
We've got some hands up.
Good,
Heshi,
good,
David,
good.
and Benzion.
Okay, we'll start out with Heshi and then go to Ned and then Benzion.
I think it really makes more sense this way to create someone who can give life as the first person rather than to create a man as the first person. It just makes more sense to me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ned, did I say you next?
Yes, thank you. It's a couple of things. So I'm struck, I also have in front of me the hardbound women's commentary. And I opened it up to this verse. And first, I have to say that it feels like that what we're looking at now is sort of like the next step. I mean, the women's commentary came out back in 2008, and that clearly was a major step in terms of looking at the Bible from a woman's point of view, but it did not alter the Hebrew in any sort of way. But it's interesting that, like, when we talk about, we're here, they inserted the word chovah and wanted that to be human, like people, or I forget what it says, but basically human beings. That's exactly what they did in the women's commentary. Is it says for that same verse, they left the Hebrew, of course, as it was, but the English is, God now said, let us make human beings, in our image, after our likeness.
Great. Thank you. Benzion.
I want to know if the term earthling, would earthling be an appropriate translation?
That's lovely. Lovely. The idea of the earthling who is created and created as an androgynous being. Both male and female are in this. And I wanted to read that a commentator named Stephen Carden writes that this is a vision of primal androgynous unity, which actually serves as a critique of the existing gender hierarchy. And that even in this very verse, it inspires resistance to a patriarchal gender hierarchy in the form of celibate, gender variant, and homoerotic and sexual utopian movements. So he says that buried in this and in this reading of Genesis, of this androgyne, who is the model for every human being, bringing together male and female and a fluid continuum in each individual. So, and then just because I enjoyed what he said in a book called The Queer Bible Commentary, rather than going to Genesis for unchanging truths of morality, theologies, and spirituality, it is much more rewarding and liberating to embrace the ambiguity and play with it, question it, challenge it, and be challenged by it. And I feel like this is exactly what Torata is doing. By pushing us, we dive into a different consideration. So then we get the blessing And I think that Morag read that blessing, but I'm just going to repeat it. And Elohim blessed them. And Elohim said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that creeps upon the earth. Well, here we could have a big conversation about the whole idea of human beings or earthlings having dominion over all the other living things of the earth. But what happens when we have a different kind of vision of a God? And we could maybe think God / ESS, however, whatever words work for us, who is saying, be fruitful and multiply. Does that really feel different when we're playing with gender roles, as Ned said early on? So do we have some hands of folks who haven't spoken yet?
Bencion's hand is up.
Other than Bencion? Or
Just Bencion right now.
okay, Bencion, go for it, please.
It's time for me to ask one of my favorite questions. Why do men have nipples? Men have nipples because all of us began as embryos for about the first 8 weeks after fertilization. That we all began as women's XX, and then the hormones began to take place, the estrogen and the androgen, and the XY became had male genitalia, and the XX remained as women with women genitalia at birth, assigned. And but the nipples were already there within the first 6 to 8 weeks. So that's why men have nipples.
Or do we
True.
all start out non-gendered?
Well, yeah,
You
that's
said
another
the
way of putting it.
hormones.
I'd
Yeah.
like to move
Yeah.
on to
All right.
Danny also had his hand up. I want to recognize Danny, please.
Okay.
Thank you. I was just sort of thinking about the matriarchal like reinterpretation of that blessing, and how like a masculine or patriarchal version feels very like oppressive, like the more that I have, the less that you have, a zero sum. Whereas I'm sort of reinterpreting this as yes, we are like be fruitful, multiply. It feels much more like a collective, we all gain from this. And I feel like that's a really nice entry point into like how we view the world, of like more collectivist, matriarchal versus zero sum patriarchal.
Thank you. I'd like to move, just because we don't have a lot of time, and I would really love to get to in chapter 2, down to verse 7, where it's also in the green here. And Muriel, could you read this for us?
Then Adonai Elohim created the Chavah of the dust of the soil and blew into her nostrils the breath of life, and the Chavah became a living soul. And Adonai Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there she put the Chavah whom she had created. Should I finish?
No, that's it for right now. And any response to this different way of thinking about breathing life into this being? Does it feel different if it's Elohim Tehovah?
So I have a question. So before breath was blown into Chovah, was she a being? I guess I'm trying to distinguish between a being and a soul.
Oh, beautiful.
And so was she a being, but without a soul until the breath was blown in and then a soul appeared?
Well, she was called a soul before, wasn't she? Wasn't that the English word that was used? I want to look back at, maybe not, maybe. So good question. What was she before that? Was she just a body without a soul? Did she need God's breath to ensoul her?
Right.
And if we think about, what do we do when an infant is born? If they haven't already taken the first breath, I think that often the nurse, the midwife, or someone will give the baby a little pat to kind of wake them up, right? And then they take their breath and they're alive. They become a living soul. They were a living soul before, but the idea of breathing air in a way that no living being has before they come out into the world. What makes a soul alive? That's, we can have a big conversation about that. And I think we're going to move on to the next part that's in green here. Thank you. And we're going to end up leaving with some frustration about the whole issue of being alone. So Heshi, I don't think you've read yet. Would you start with verse 18?
Happy to. I did read when you were gone, but
I'm
happy to read again.
Okay, thank you.
And Elohim said, "It is not good that the Jehovah should be alone. I will make her a helpmate opposite her." And out of the ground Elohim formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them to the Jehovah to see what she would call them. And whatever the Jehovah would call every living creature, that was to be its name. And the Jehovah gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for the Jehovah, there was not found a helper to be opposite her. And Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall upon the Jehovah, and she slept. And she took one of her ribs and closed up the place with its flesh instead. And from the rib which Elohim had taken from the Jehovah, she built a man and brought him to the Jehovah.
And Susan's going to move down. We've got a couple more lines here.
And the Jehovah said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. He will be called man because he was taken out of a woman. Therefore, a woman will leave her mother and her father, and she will cleave to her man, and they will be one flesh. And they were both naked, the Jehovah and her man, and were not ashamed."
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did this resonate with each of you as you read, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. He will be called man because he was taken out of woman."
Woman. Okay.
Yeah, you read it perfectly, Hesh. So what do you think? Jerry, are you ready to jump in?
Yes, I just had a pizza at Sbarro at Union Station. I'm ready. I just want to point out that later on there's another story that says that man and woman were created separately at the same time. So we have to always bear that in mind too.
Yes, that's exactly correct. But we're looking at this one now, and I wonder.
Yeah, I know, but some people don't either know that at all or forgot. So just pointing that out.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Other hands, other folks who want to jump in.
Ellen Poster's up, hands up.
Ellen.
Ellen, you're muted.
Okay, now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I have a problem. I have a problem with the next part where it says that 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 she will cleave to her man. Why doesn't it say that the man will leave his mother and cleave to her?
Aha. Well, this is a translation that flips the traditional text. And then we get to say exactly, we get to ask exactly as Ellen has. Because what Ellen is reading and hearing is what? Why will he cleave to her? And why will she cleave to him? And it's because it's the way it's written. We're now noticing what we might not have noticed before. So those of you who have a traditional text in front of you, you might want to read the English to us. Somebody got it from
Yes.
20 verse 24?
I
Susan?
do. This is the women's Torah. So
Uh-huh.
it is that a man will leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and they become one flesh.
So there it is. So it's written that the Adam will cling to his wife, and here she will cling to her man. So here is this kind of primal attraction that is very much in binary terms, which for some of us is taken for granted, and for others of us, it's really. So we're leaving each other with more questions and more frustration than we might have. I'm wondering, as we finish up tonight, we're really at our end of our hour, whether anyone wants to just add a few more words. Of discovery, whether this works for you, whether it makes you delighted, anxious, frustrated, wanting to read more. I can send you to the Torata. There is a site to go on and read more if you'd like. Cecile, please.
I find it very interesting, but a little confusing because I do not know the original text.
Uh-huh.
So, having both texts next to each other might be helpful, at least for me, and I'll look into that.
All right. Well, unfortunately, it's not printed out that way yet with the Torata. So we're still in a state of growth with this, but I totally agree with you. And one of the amazing things about Yael's work is that she is a calligrapher. And so when she creates these pieces to read, we can see several different visions at once.
Excuse me, could folks mute?
Very helpful.
Could folks mute if you're not muted? That's better. Thanks.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
if there is anyone who doesn't have a Torah, you can go to, I think it's safaria.org. I'll put it in the chat. It's got all the text there for you. It's very helpful.
Thank you, Susan. So I really want to honor our time. We have come to the end, and there may be, oh good, Rachel, thank you very much. She put it up here. And anything else in the chats? Okay, terrific. And I moved into another room. I moved into the room where my
router
is. Thank you. The light in here isn't very good, but I can work on it for next time. This is the first time this has happened to me in this house, so I don't know what happened tonight. Maybe it's the weather. Anyway, I'm really delighted to be with all of you. We will be gathering again in 2 weeks, and we're going to have another powerful portion. And of course, we could spend many months. I took a class in Genesis when I was in graduate school with a very, very amazing teacher. And we spent the entire semester reading, I don't know how many verses, not very many. So you see, we are moving pretty fast here. And really, I just must mention Dr. Henry Fischel, who was my teacher at Indiana University, for that class on Bereshit. Makes me want to go now and look up all my notes, but it was pretty ancient history. And part of the fun of doing this work is, as one of you mentioned, there's new work all the time. When the Women's Torah Commentary was published in 2008, it was really the cutting edge. And now we continue to push the boundaries. So this goes to our Jewish tradition that says that we are creating Torah always ourselves, and that the questions that each student asks will be folded into our new learning. So thank you all for your questions tonight, and I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.